Happy Sunday, everyone. My name's Hank Suttala,
And I'm Casey McBride.
and we're here with another fun episode of Stir Crazy Shamans. Hello, everyone. Hope everyone is having a wonderful day. If you're catching us and you're a fan of the show, please take a moment to share the stream. But we are just here to have a quick talk, and I thought how appropriate being the 4th of July, perhaps on freedom.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And putting Casey on the spot because I just came up with
We have a topic. Wow. That's a first. We have
well, the little segue thing that I had typed in the description is like, how free do you want to be?
Oh, okay.
And freedom isn't necessarily what you think. It's really being in. This is for me anyway. Being in your full awareness, not denying anything that you're aware of. Because how often do we pretend not to know things or pretend that we aren't aware of things just to choose something else? Where the true freedom is, if you are fully in allowance of everything you're aware of, you have the freedom to truly choose what feels light instead of being the victim of things happening to you because you're pretending not to know what you know. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So to me, freedom comes when you finally stop identifying with the mind, because the mind wants to pull you in all different directions, and people have the idea like, oh, I'm a slave to my job, and I'm a slave to this or that, and like I don't feel free because I don't have financial freedom or whatever. But what is all of that in reality? Those are all just concepts, thoughts in your mind, right? So we could say is an infinite being, but we can have a direct experience of that. We are the space, the timeless, formless consciousness that allows for all of our thoughts and all of physical reality, for everything to be. We're the space that allows for all of that. But somehow, and it's one of the great paradoxes, because the space, the one consciousness, always is as it is. It can never be trapped. It can never be untrapped. It has concepts such as that. However, one of the great paradoxes in this dualistic reality, somehow that which is beyond form, we becomes trapped with an identity inside of form in our mind, in our thoughts. That's what we call the ego. When isness, when pure consciousness becomes identified and attached to the thoughts and the emotions flowing through our energy field and our minds and our bodies, then that's ego, and we're stuck believing that we are our thoughts, we are our emotions, or we are our body, etc. And so when we are able to truly step out of identification with all of that and realize that we are the isness, and not just have that as a mental concept, because if you're thinking, I am oneness, I am consciousness, then you're just as trapped as someone who thinks that they are their job or whatever, because again, that's just another idea in the head. But to truly step out and have the direct experience of just being that space, that is true freedom.
So now the question is, how do you get there? And the little snippet that I put into the description, how free do you want to be? That's something I actually picked up in the program when I was getting sober. And they would say, how free do you want to be? And it was all about doing your inner work and taking all the things in your life that felt heavy and doing something about it. And the way that I boil it down is to a single question: when have I ever done anything unloving to myself or to another? Those are all the things that have created heaviness in your life. And those are the things to look at, to start transforming, transmuting, start to get them into the flow in terms of energetically, so you can have that freedom. Because all those things are the things that the ego is desperately trying to avoid looking at because of whatever reason, because of the judgments around it. And if you just go ahead and look at it anyway, it's not as scary as you think it is. Once you start doing the work, and that's where that saying comes from. Because once you start doing that work and you don't have any of that heaviness in your energy field anymore, your body, you really can start choosing to live life to the fullest, because you don't have any of this baggage holding you down. Think of like a hot air balloon at those little sandbags, right? You're getting rid of all the sandbags so you can fly higher and higher into the upper world.
Yeah, no, it is, and that's one of the things that like when I guide people through mindfulness. I don't like the word mindful. That's a horrible translation from the Buddhist concept of being fully present and remaining as the space. through everything that you do, not just in your sitting meditation, but throughout life. But when I guide people to sort of have that kind of experience for the first time, when I'm the one sitting there, like talking them through how to touch in with that, most of the time people feel they feel peace, or they even cry and there's a big release or whatever. But then when they go to do it on their own, when it's like them left to their own devices and they're trying to touch back in with that, then all this uncomfortable stuff starts to percolate, and then they become really like Hank says, they can become even more anxious
Right.
than before. And it's because well, one, the ego can only survive, the identification with thought form can only survive when you're identified with it. So one of the ways that it likes to pull you in is it brings in up something with a lot of gravity, right? And so like gravity, heaviness, right? So there's this heavy emotion, thought, memory, some traumatic thing comes up, and that sucks you right back in with it. And whether or not you go down the story of whatever that traumatic thing was and you follow that memory, or you go, oh, I don't want to experience that, so you start thinking about a bunch of other things. Either way, the ego's got you, and you are in a way kept in identification with the thought stream. So because the last thing the ego wants you to do is to truly disidentify with it, because then it dies. Right? In a way, it perceives that it's going to die anyway. The ego perceives that being in the space, not thinking, that's not necessarily even not thinking, but just being as the isness and realizing that you are the space, the one consciousness free from form. To the ego, that's death to have that experience.
Yeah, my experience is, I'm sorry.
So it fights tooth and nail to do everything that it can. It'll bring up the most horrible, uncomfortable experiences for us to keep us from touching in with what we truly are.
See, and I always took it as what my meditation teacher would say, that when you meditate, it's like a field in the wintertime, and the the boulders get heaved up. I don't know where that was coming from. But anyhow, and the ego, when this stuff starts to shimmy up, it tries to distract by thinking about all the things you should be doing, all the things you could be doing, all the things you haven't done. But the things that come up that do have the heaviness, those are those boulders popping up. And it's important then that for me, you dive into it like, okay, what in this needs healing? How can I take this heaviness and transmute it to a positive, or a lighter expression, I should say, because I don't want to put positive and negative into the context. So those are the things that are sneaking through the ego self-defense, thinking, oh, I have to go shopping. Oh, I have to do the laundry. Oh, I've never, my wife is going to yell at me because I'm streaming right now, or whatever the case is. That one might be true. No, she's not going to yell at me.
Yeah, no, but I remember there was one point where I had sort of fallen back into the realm of the physical and wasn't really in that space of being as the space. And every time I would try, same thing, some really uncomfortable stuff would come up. So I go, it's not worth it. I'm just gonna do the physical thing for a while. And then I actually had a reading from this guy, and I asked him about that. I said, every time I try and touch back in with that, the pure space of consciousness, it gets really uncomfortable. And he's like, yeah. I said, well, you have a choice. Either you're going to stay on this path of the physical and being distracted and pulled in whatever direction the mind wants to take you, or you can work past that, because one, it's not going to kill you to have those uncomfortable experiences. But then once you work past that, once you clear those heavy energies away, then you already know what's on the other side of that. It's the deepest peace, the most pure love, and the most incredible joy that you never thought was possible. And I said, yes, I know that's there. So I sat down. I'm like, you know what? I don't care. I'm getting through it. And it didn't even take that long. It was a matter of like a few minutes of really uncomfortable, like, I'm going to die, horrible panic attack. And then I said, you know what? I don't care. Mind, do your worst, because I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. So do your worst, mind and body, whatever. I don't care. And then it made all kinds of noise and for a while. And then it just quieted down, and then there was just deep peace again. So so know that it's all a bluff. It's a bluff by the mind when that stuff comes up. It can't hurt you.
No. And what if it's that easy just to allow it to come up, to acknowledge it for a moment, and then it moves on, just like a cloud through the sky? We're the ones holding on to it,
right?
And if we just acknowledge it, it goes whoo. And there's a way you can trigger all these things to happen more quickly. I won't give all of them because it can cause more havoc, but there's in transcendental meditation, the sutras of Patanjali that they use is basically like after you start going into meditation and you get to that semi-silent place, you drop it's like a sutra that you basically drop the energy of a word into your other than conscious, and what it does is anything that doesn't match that word or would prevent you from experiencing it, it gets shimmied to the top. So it's like boulder heaving on steroids. So so the first three, which I'll give now, and the rest, like play with the first three and then you can message me for more, but the first three are friendliness, compassion, and joy. And for each one, and just give it a couple minutes in between as you're sitting there in the silence, or as close as you can get to the silence, you just drop them like a pebble into a pond. And as it goes down, anything that doesn't vibrate with that energy of friendliness, it starts just coming to the top. And it is a way to intentionally go after these things that are a heaviness in you that might need healing and that type of thing, or acknowledgement, and so they can move on, whatever the case is. So something to play with, and maybe just start with one. Just start with friendliness, and then see how you do. Because if you do get a lot of stuff coming up, then sometimes it's not a kindness to yourself to drop three at once and before you know what you're getting into. But start with the friendliness, and then you can add in compassion, and then joy, and then if you like what you're experiencing, message me and I'll give you some more.
So that's something in my healing work that I've started to realize more and more, is that the surface stuff, when I because I do like a sort of tracking thing where people say they want emotional healing. Like, all right, where is that in your body? What's the heaviest? Where is it uncomfortable? We work, and then work to release those energies, do whatever we need to do to manipulate the energy field to clear away that heaviness, etc. And then they're feeling comfortable and good. And if I'm doing a shorter session, I'll usually just leave it at that. But then when I have these longer sessions, like 45 minutes, hour and a half, it may only take like 5 minutes before the person's feeling completely good and light, and they're like, I'm good, I'm perfect. But then what I've kind of realized is, all right, well, maybe I should start prodding them a little bit. Some of that.
Shake them up.
I know you're feeling really good right now, but there's some deeper stuff you need to deal with. Are you okay if I say and do some things that are going to make you really uncomfortable so we can clear that away? So then, and it's funny, sometimes spirit will give me like certain things to say and ask the person. Other times it'll come through in another language. Like spirit's like, hey, say this. And I'm like, well, I don't know if that's any language that ever existed on Earth, but I'm going to say it. And then I'll just say this, whatever words come out in this like completely foreign language. And a person doesn't understand that. I don't understand that, but they're like, oh, like, what's this? My solar plexus, my heart, it's like really heavy right now. And then I worked it. So, yeah. So it's interesting, though.
One day that I do that, well, a lot of my clients, the first thing I like to do is at least a mini session of access bars. And each one of the bars, if you're not familiar with it, it's like these, the way I describe it is your brain is a computer, and each bar point is like a folder with a theme. So it's like you have healing, you have creativity, relationships, all these things. And when you're running that bar, it creates a bar of energy. That's where the modality's name comes from. But it starts to bring up all the thoughts, feelings, considerations, judgments, projections, conclusions they have around that subject. And even without telling the client what bar I'm running, all of a sudden they might start talking about things that are relevant to that bar. So it's like that's a natural way to start turning up some of the things that people might be releasing. So I know I happen to have a bars class, Casey. You should come and be a guinea pig there so you can learn it.
Nice.
But it's a cool way to that I have found that lets people bring that up. And the beautiful thing is too, they don't even have to relive the experience or anything. Just being in the energy of it, it already starts to dissipate just because of the nature of how that modality works.
Very cool. Yeah, I was on a hike with Mary Ford and Jason is her husband's
Yes.
name, right? And we were all just kind of playing with energy, doing all kinds of stuff. And then Jason was like, all right, what did you just feel right now? And I kind of described what I felt. And he had like run some access tool for like connecting with the earth or something on me.
Oh, restoration and communion with the earth, probably.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what it was called. So so that was cool. So I got a little taste. That was, I think, the first time anyone had done that kind of thing from access on me. Did you do any bars on me during our?
I don't remember. I usually start with at least the energy pulls because it's a great way, regardless of what else you do, to keep the energy flowing. And I usually do at least the implant band because it's where we keep all the programming, where we align and agree with other people's judgments and projections about ourselves as true for us, even though it's BS.
Mm-hmm.
So I usually at least do that, and then I go wherever the energy is lightest, but I don't remember. That's too long ago.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
But 9 times out of 10, I start with a few bars, and then I'll move on to sound healing and or shamanism. I know I did a lot of shamanic work with you. I
Oh,
remember
yeah.
that,
Yep.
but it's a vague memory at this point. This is like a decade ago, right?
Right. Yeah. Very long
Like
time
more,
ago.
more like more like 2.5 months, 3 months ago.
Well, I think it may have been like 6 months ago now, actually.
Was it 6?
Yeah, I want to say it was like 6 or 7,
Oh
actually.
yeah, because I'm forgetting about Spirit Lodge time.
Yep.
You guys might think Casey and I have known each other for a lifetime, but it hasn't been that long that we actually connected. Basically, the start of the show is when we started connecting. So 80 episodes. That's how I've gotten to know Casey.
and many hikes and other adventures as well.
Yes, and we will be doing a lot more of that this summer. This has also been just the most amazing summer weather-wise. It hasn't been too hot. It's been just breathtakingly gorgeous, awesome.
Yeah, so much magic everywhere, all the time. Oh, I had a thought, and then it just went like poof.
Well, while you're thinking about that, if you're watching, if you have any questions or comments, we honor
Yeah,
those.
please
We
comment.
always love that because it tells us where the energy of the show is going. If you don't make a comment, then we can't go there. So, and nothing's off topic or off limits. You can pretty much comment about anything that's legal.
Oh, and we're streaming to a bunch of different locations. So unless you're watching on Hank's profile, Stir Crazy Shamans, Shaman's Way, Facebook, or the YouTube channel or Periscope, any other places you're watching from, you will have to probably just go to the YouTube channel to comment to know for sure we're seeing your comments.
Yeah. Or go to our website, stircrazyshamans.com. The live stream is embedded on the front page, including the ability to comment, so you can do it right from there.
And we just had someone now. Afra, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, says, "Hi, how are you guys? We are wonderful. How are you?" Is there anything you'd like to hear us talk about if you've been watching? Let us know. We would love to take the conversation in any direction you would like to go.
Yeah, and hopefully on future Sunday episodes, we're hoping that Jameson can start joining us again. He's been playing hooky a little bit, but hopefully he will be returning next month or next week. Next
month.
unless I wear something, I don't know.
I don't know.
Let's pot and pock all the things that would prevent Jameson from joining us sooner. And hopefully we'll also be doing a few more recordings out in nature, because that's been a lot of fun. Just it's hard to do it actually live because of bandwidth issues, but we've been recording in nature and then uploading it afterwards, so you can check those out. And he just gave us a little heart and little hands. Oh, he said yes first, but he hasn't said what he likes us to talk about yet. Unless this is it. Oh, talking about heart drinking?
Heart booze.
Heart booze? That, there's a word for that. It's called Sami.
Sami.
So Sami, for people who don't know that Quechua term, Sami just means light, and it is partially based on your point of view, because things might be light or heavy to you. Something that's heavy to me might be light for Casey or vice versa. So Sami literally means light. And there's all kinds of different types of Sami. Like we have Kanchai, which is like the light energy from the upper world. We have Kaosai, which is the Sami that's expressing into this field of living energy, all kinds of good stuff. And let's see. Well, yes, we do have a YouTube channel. If you just search for Stir Crazy Shamans, you'll find it on YouTube. Or you can also go to our website, stircrazyshamans.com, and there is a link over to the YouTube channel. You can also listen to the show on iTunes and all that kind of good stuff. And the question was, have you worked with people expecting night terrors and PTSD? This is from Jennifer, different person commenting.
PTSD, yes. I don't think I've specifically worked with anyone that experiences frequent night terrors yet. But post-traumatic stress disorder, I have. How to put it? Soul retrieval is what I'll end up doing a lot of the time. And the way that I kind of think of that is that when there is a really traumatic event, the only reason it's continuing to cause us problems and suffering is because a part of our spirit, our energy, our awareness is caught in that part of space-time where we're sort of reliving that over and over again, or we're connected to the energy of that time and place and the events that happen there. So when we retrieve those fragments of our spirit or our soul that have been fragmented and stuck, reliving that, and then reincorporate them into us, then it's like we've brought that part of ourselves back, and it's no longer attached to any of the suffering or the trauma that we had experienced. It's now just a whole part of us as it's supposed to be.
Right. And PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. Someone was asking about that, just to put that into context. And I echo what Casey said, using soul retrieval as one tool. And then there was a neuroscientist who did a topographical brain map study on access bars, and in a someone that had severe PTSD that was 5 magnitude normal, quote unquote. I forget what statistically that means, but it's a lot. It's way more than like average. In a 90-minute session, it went from 5 magnitude to normal, which is why the guy dedicated a huge part of his life now to researching like access and stuff like that. So that works. And there's also an energy flow called trifold sequencing, which is an energy that helps stop the looping process, but combining that with or just instead of or combining with soul retrieval are both really effective. And I have a roll-on my website. If you go to hanksetela.com, click store, there is a aromatherapy roll-on specifically formulated, and that was a case study done for post-traumatic stress disorder patients.
And there are certain spirits that we might call on as well that are really good with helping people to release those thought patterns and those emotions. So there are spiritual allies we can call on to help deal with that as well.
Oh, and Angie's saying hi. Hi, Angie. So good to see you. We have to have you back on. In fact, if you're free now, I'll send you a link if you want to hop on with us. Just let me know. And Angie's been on the show with us before. She's a registered medium in Lilydale and always has amazing things to contribute to conversations and has an amazing energy. So Angie, absolutely. I know you might not be ready to come on air or whatnot, but anytime we're on, I'll shoot you a link and you can hop on with us if you like. And what about for night terrors? I haven't. One thing that you could do, depending on what's going on, like if it's somebody that just is really good at astral projecting and they're like getting caught up, like is it really dreams? Are they dreaming about something which could be more related to soul retrieval type stuff, or are they just not disciplined with the ability to travel astrally or the different realms? Because it might also be something where the person in that space just needs to raise their vibration a bit to be in a lighter space where it's not so scary. So if you were to like grid the bedroom, like with quartz crystals, putting them in the corners, maybe a little amethyst cluster under the bed, like things like that to increase the vibration of the space where they're sleeping, that may also curve that a little bit too. She says that today.
And they may just need, like Hank said, they may need training, if they really are just stuck in between realms and traveling out of body without knowing how to control that. They may need someone to sort of teach them how to, again, just control what the gifts that they have. And then it may seem like a curse, obviously, if they're having night terrors. That's not a good thing, but it may really be just a really powerful ability that this person has that they are that is really not disciplined or organized in their mind.
Yeah, or they could be drinking. If they're drinking, that could be causing it too. Especially if it's mixed with certain things like clary sage, which is an essential oil mixed with alcohol, can cause night terrors. So there's also environmental things to look at. If there's like a drinking thing going on, then of course that would need to be mitigated.
Interesting thing. My brother suffered from really severe night terrors his whole life. And he said when he started drinking at least a couple of beers a night, that completely eliminated all of his night terrors.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, it's exactly opposite. That's a great testament how you might have 10 people all with the same thing and something works for one person and not the other. And that's where it's really important to start to, really develop this binary dialogue with the universe where you can ask a question and feel what's light for you, which is going to be what's true for you and what will be helping you, and what's heavy, which is the opposite, will make things possibly worse or not be a contribution to you.
Right.
But Terry's on too. Hello, Terry. Everybody's chiming in. Good to see you, sir.
Love it.
He's with Fellowships of the Spirit. And now we had him asking, how do you know your gifts? Now, Casey's probably a great one to ask this to because he actually helps teach people to access their communication with their guides and things of that nature. Any and
she also said, I really feel that, I don't know, I really feel that I'm gifted all times. Well, One, I sometimes use the word gift just because it's the word other people use, but I don't really like the word gifts. I much prefer to say like abilities, because they're all abilities that we all have. Anyone can learn to see spirit. Anyone can learn to do healing work. Anyone can learn to feel energy. It's just for some people are born with certain abilities a little more open than others. Like some people are born and they don't have to do anything and they can just see really clearly. Other people are born, they can feel everything. Some people don't really have much of that at all. But I will say one thing is that I have worked with people and trained people. Some people who were natural born, very sensitive, could see, feel, hear, spirit, all of this stuff. And they never trained with it or anything. So they're very sensitive and very able to perceive all this. But then they never really want to do anything to take it further because they've always had that and they never felt the need to like train or anything. And then I've worked with people who had almost no sensitivity. Like they tried and tried and could not feel, see, experience anything in their mind. And then working with them and them dedicating and training day after day after day and putting the work in, and they become so much more skilled, organized, and even more sensitive than the naturally born really sensitive people.
Right.
So it doesn't matter where you start. If you're dedicated, if you really want to put in the effort and train and practice, then anyone can become very sensitive and very, very talented.
Yeah. It's almost like a muscle. If you think of a gym analogy, if you go the first time you ever go to work out, you might not be able to lift that much or hardly anything at all, or only be able to run a short distance. But when you put the time in and work those muscles and the things that are around the ability to do the different workouts, then you continue to gain strength and you can do more and more and more. So.
And a big, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, well, but the final part of my analogy is, and the person that's going to the gym and actually doing the work is going to eventually surpass someone who's naturally fast, just to use tying into your analogy.
Yes, absolutely. But a big part of this, how do I know if I'm gifted? I feel like I'm gifted, all of this, right? So, again, it's just and without going too much into any kind of like conspiracy sounding stuff, but we are sort of programmed out of our abilities from a young age. We're taught to distrust our own experience, right? At some point, our parents, our teachers.
Yeah. Oh, that's just in your head, honey. You couldn't possibly know that.
It's time to stop playing with your imaginary friends, right? Stop imagining so much. It's time to be an adult. You need to focus on math. Math is much more important. And so we're trained to so people always say, well, how do I know I'm not just imagining that? Well, one, the only reason you're thinking that is because someone told you that a long time ago and you bought into it. It's the only reason you have that thought. You just bought into a false idea someone threw at you.
And even worse than that, with kids, we train them to stop being. Because, oh my gosh, what if acting out? The kids are just pure being in the world. They're just being, right? And we're so concerned about people judging us as parents because the kids are doing this or that. Oh, what will the neighbors think? You can't have too much fun. People are going to be annoyed at how loud you're being. And then they learn to stop being. And when you're in your pure being, that's when your gifts are naturally flowing. Mm-hmm. And then on top of telling kids not to be in the world and just start to do as we say, not as we do, right? Then on top of that, we're telling them, don't play with your imaginary friends. It's in your head and all that. But I think the real, I don't want to use the word crime, but really it is somewhat of a crime that we teach them at a young age, don't be in the world. You're more important to society as a human doing instead of a human being. And as you start to get rid of that human doing mentality, your natural gifts your abilities can really develop in a very short period of time when you get rid of all the gunk that we use to turn them off.
The biggest part of me teaching people is uneducating them, right? So okay, the first thing I tell people, okay, first off, the idea you have about imagination, just throw that out, right? Imagination doesn't exist. There's no such thing as imagination, right? Everything we experience is real. All of our experience is real. There's no such thing as an unreal reality. If you're experiencing it, it's real. So but the other thing I also tell people is don't fight that, right? So when people are trying to, for example, communicate with their spirit guides, they're like, I was really in this beautiful space and I was having this communication, but then I started thinking, what if this is all in my head? I'm just making it up. How do I know that it's real? And I tell them, when the mind says that, you can respond to it, right? Just say, okay, that's fine. I'm making this all up. It's all in my head. It's just imagination. Now let me get back to it. And then you keep doing it. Right? Because if you give it resistance and you sit there like, no, I shouldn't be thinking this. This is keeping me from being spiritual. What you resist persists, and you're resisting the ideas of imagination and all of that. And then you're just going to give more power to it, and it's going to get stronger and stronger and stronger. But if instead you go, yep, it's all in my head. Now I'm going to keep talking to this imaginary thing and just have the experience. That's a lot lighter, and eventually the mind's going to stop coming in and saying that because it knows it's not really pulling you in any direction or the other. So so don't fight that. Just it's fine. I'm imagining it. Now let me get back to this because it's really awesome.
No, I think that's one of the tools that we use in NLP and other things is if people can't feel something or if they're having trouble, they say, well, pretend what would it feel like if you could? And then using your disciplined imagination opens the door for you to have the experience. And that's another little cool workaround. And Angie's just chiming in, just saying how we're all intuitive, and the more you build the muscle, the better you get. Really good analogy. Mm-hmm. And then also our imaginary friend are our spirit guides. A lot of times they can be. And she agrees with what we're saying.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, to touch back real quick on like the programming kids out of their gifts and all of that. I was on a hike yesterday with our friend Mary Ford, and her daughter was with us. Oh my goodness, her daughter is like a gold mine of incredibly powerful information. And I think just to my knowledge, no one ever told her that she couldn't do any of that stuff. But she was telling us about like how she's like traveled with like extraterrestrials and been on their spaceships and traveled to their other planets. And then also how like we were just walking through the forest and I started to look, then this hawk flew by right in front of us. This big hawk flies right by through the trail and lands on this tree. And we were probably 6, 7, 8, 9 feet away from this huge hawk in this tree. And I'm looking at it, and this hawk is just staring right at me. And I start to get this like download of information. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, whoa, this guy's giving me a ton of information. And she's like, whoa, I'm getting it too. And so we were both sitting there receiving all this information energetically from this bird. And I'm just getting it as like the feeling, and then also like the images of these like complex, like fractally type images. And like it's just kind of been encoded into my energy field. And afterwards she was like, yeah, I got all the information, and then they were giving me the language behind it and giving it to me in words. So not only did she have the experience that I had and probably more, but also she had it all like translated in English up in her head afterward too. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So I just, I see, I really,
I got a picture of that hawk too. I'm grabbing it. I think she sent me a picture, and then there was like underneath that picture, I had the awareness of like a little spirit being behind it.
Oh yeah, there's all kinds of stuff going on that hike. But I just hope no one ever tells her not to keep tapping into all of that incredible stuff.
Okay, here we go. I'm just going to save this and I'll upload it. Now, hawks, incidentally, that's what hawks, if you ever have an experience with one, they are the message bringers. They almost always have a download. And in fact, that's where I got the inspiration to finally mix shamanism and sound healing. I kept them completely separate for a very long time. And I've told this story before. I was on the way to drop my kids off at daycare at the time, and this hawk swooped so close to my car, I had to slam on the brakes to not hit it. It was just inches from my windshield, and it just kind of cocks its head and looks at me. And in that moment, I got Sonic Shaman, and that's when I started mixing everything. But it could be like a real subtle impulse like that. But if you're open to it, you can receive it. And my neighbor 2 doors down, she's very she has like the equivalent training that I have, but from like having studied in India, so like going down a different type of lineage or whatnot. And there was a hawk right outside her house just making noises, and I knew he has a message, but it's not for me. So I actually called her, like, yeah, there's a hawk right outside, he has a message for you, you need to go out and talk to him. And she's like, okay. Well, she messages me back or calls me back and says, you're right, he did have a message, it was important that I went out. So hawks are an amazing message bringer in the animal world. Okay, and I'm never going to get this up if I keep talking while I'm trying to save it.
And I just wanted, Angie was saying, I like watching you guys. Thank you so much. And then she also said, I have hawks living in my yard. They swoop through all the time. Mm-hmm. They are so beautiful and powerful and just like regal in the way that they just watching them sit on a branch, right? Oh, They are very beautiful, powerful animals.
Yeah. Now, this is a picture that I had zoomed in from what Mary said. It's uploading now. Come on. I got the little circle. It's going. It's going. There we go. Here is the picture of the hawk right in the middle there.
Yeah, man, that thing was cool. It looks so small compared to in person on the picture there, but I mean, this dude was huge, and we were so close to it. That was really incredible.
Yeah, love it, love it, love it. There was one time I was eating breakfast and it just hawk landed right on my power cable, like right outside our dining room window. And just the entire time while I ate, it was almost like we were having a conversation back and forth while I was eating. It was really magical. And every animal, really, there's magical moments if they all have a little energy to receive.
Yeah, they all have.
She never thought about asking for a message, but she is now. She's going to let us know. Yeah, check it out. And no, well, you know the drill. Like that's not always the communication that you think it's going to be. For me, it always just comes as an impulse and a knowing. But I'm sure that they can talk in different ways to different people too.
Yeah, and I know, like in any animal you come across, if you're really present with them, they all have incredible medicine for us, right? They all have healing messages, and if we're open to receiving it, we can learn a lot from every animal in the animal kingdom. We really can.
Yeah, and if you have a like or a love for an animal in particular, like I've always loved wolves, and one of my first journey experiences. That was actually my second totem animal that started to present itself to me. So you never know, like you might be really liking it for a reason. And who's the guy who, I think it was Ted Andrews, am I thinking the name right? He wrote like a card deck and a book about animals and like what all the spiritual meanings are. Does that sound familiar?
I have no idea.
Angie might know him, but he's in spirit now. But I know that there's a really good collection of like an oracle deck with animals and a book as well that has a lot of the references and what different animals are. Like I know wolf is pathfinder, hawk is messenger, and that's about all I know. Those are the two that I have.
Yeah, for me, I ever since I was a little kid, I was so fascinated and in love with snakes. I just thought they were the coolest things. They were so beautiful. And even when I was really young at Pelee Island, it's the southernmost point in Canada. It's in the Canadian waters of Lake Erie. On that island, there are a lot of water snakes. And, some of them are pretty big. Like when I was a kid, obviously I was shorter because I was a kid, but there were some of them that were like longer than I was tall. And I would go out and I would catch these huge wild snakes, right? And I would catch them, and at first they'd be trying to like attack and bite and all this stuff, but I would just be like really present with them, and then they would calm down, and I would get them to the point like they were a domesticated like pet snake, and I would wear them around my neck, and they would just crawl through my fingers, and we were like buddies for the whole weekend, and we would just hang out, and I would like have a friend snake that I would hang out with for the weekend while I was up there.
This is concerning. This is very concerning. I always thought with the beard I had you pegged as a Gryffindor, but now I think you're a Slytherin. I don't know if I can be friends with you anymore.
Oh, that's great. But then, so years and years later, when I went on, I think it was my first ever shamanic journey, way back in the day, my first ever shamanic journey. The first spirit guide that I met with was the snake. And we had an incredible, powerful bonding experience. And since then, years later, I had an experience where I met, was my snake guide that's been with me for so long. I was actually having dreams before I went on this journey of like getting bit by snakes. And I was never like angry with the snake or anything. I was just like, I got bit and I was like, whoa, this might be poisonous. I need to do something about this. And it was, but anyway, get all these dreams where I was getting bit by these snakes. And then I went on a shamanic journey. And my snake guide was there, and then this other like snake came up and was talking to him, and then they like sort of introduced themselves to me, and they're like, "Hey, you need to come with us." And so I went with them and met. They took me to a realm. It was an Earth-like planet, but it was basically inhabited by these, some giant, some small, but all like really intelligent, powerful snake beings, and they needed help with something, so I helped them with that. But then after that, they had told me that when I first came to the planet eons ago, when I first came to Earth, the first race of beings that I made a pact with in spirit was the snake the snake beings, like these powerful snake beings. And so we had a whole ritual in that journey around me sort of like reaffirming my connection and my bond with their race of beings. And so that was really, really
Very
cool.
interesting. And then, of
Yeah.
course, in the shamanic tradition you're apprenticing now, the first, we believe that in the Peruvian tradition, everybody has this thing called a yanapek, which is 7 spirit beings. And the first 3 are animals. The first one is traditionally a snake, but could be anything cold-blooded, which brings me to the point that it still happens that you have a snake. And then the second one would be like a mammal of some kind, traditionally a puma or a jaguar. And the third one would be a bird, traditionally a condor. And then the rest are a little bit different. But we can save that for a different time if it comes up.
Very cool. Yeah, but no, it's all. Ooh, let's pull up some of these real quick. Oh, there was just one. Someone saying, I have a wolf as a guide. Yeah, it's very cool, man. Connecting with our spirit guides is so amazing, and I used to do a lot of spirit guide readings. I was doing that a lot for a while, and now I'm more focused on shamanic healing. But I mean, really, when I'm doing shamanic healing, most of the time, I just hold the space. I hold the space, and my guides are like, "We've got this," and they're the ones that do the work. So if I had never taken all of that time to really develop a deep, deep relationship with my guides, I don't think I would be able to do the kind of healing that I'm able to do.
Yep. Now, Angie did bring up she worries about the hawks because she has small dogs. I never thought about it. I'm going to communicate with them and see what their message is and ask them to leave the dogs be. I just didn't think of communication. Absolutely. Yeah,
You're a medium and you didn't think to communicate?
Oh, Casey, don't give her a hard time. No, well, but up in Alaska, my grandma and grandpa lived on a lake, and well, she still lives there on the lake. And you had to be careful because these bald eagles would just be like circling around, and if you were out with your dog, and you let them like not be close to you, next thing you know, an eagle comes down, snags your dog, and off it goes, and you're down one pet. So it is definitely something to be mindful of and aware of, but not be afraid of. and you can ask them to leave the dogs alone, and just make sure, like, if a new hawk comes into the area, you got to have that conversation again.
Oh yeah, we gotta have fun. And Dean says, I have been using energy healing, but would love to use shamanic healing or learn shamanic healing. Shamanic healing is incredible. I have been practicing it for over a decade, but I'm now finally apprenticing with a human shaman teacher. My goodness, it blows every other energy healing modality I've ever come across completely out of the water. I'm not putting any of those other modalities down. They are all very beautiful and can do some incredible things. But for me personally, shamanic healing is on a whole other level, and it's just incredible. So yeah, I absolutely encourage you to find a teacher.
Well, and our teacher Zane Kerfman, he wrote the book Inca Mountain Magic. We just started recently a 20-week virtual apprenticeship, but we're planning to do that a couple times a year. So if you go to hanksettle.com, my website, which is just my name with no space.com, and shoot me an email, I can add you to the list. And when we do the virtual apprenticeship next, it will always start on like a new moon, and it's like a 6-week intro. And then if you want to do like the rest, it's like a 20-week course. And then a couple times a year, we're going to have like an in-person 1-week retreat where we can do the stuff that can't be done online, like the hot ton karpai, the great initiation. But a lot of the stuff is teachable online. So some food for thought if that resonates with you. But that's the thing, find someone that resonates with you, whether it's my teacher Zane and it's the Caro tradition of South America, or you like Alberto, who has the Four Winds, which is a blending of like northern and southern traditions, or village elder Maggie, who is more of like the Siberian region of Russia tradition. You find someone that you resonate with and dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen to that call. If you're feeling called to learn shamanic healing, just do it. I couldn't recommend exploring a path any more than I could learning about shamanism. It is just so incredible. And then Angie was just saying she's afraid they're thinking my dogs are like a nice little snack.
It might be. It's like, well, if this lady doesn't start listening to us, we're going to take her dog out. Pot and pock, all that brings up and lets down.
All right. Well, I'm feeling like this is probably a good little point right here.
Yeah, just
On that beautiful note.
and just a few things coming up. If you go to stircrazyshamans.com on Wednesday, we have our next virtual group healing session. You can just show up and participate in the stream, but if you do decide to register, it doesn't cost anything to register. It just you put in your name, and then during the opening ceremony, we specifically call you in by name and add your energy to the energy a little bit more specifically. So if you want to do that, you're welcome to. And then this week,
where do they get? What's the best place to go to get that info?
Stir Crazy Shamans. Look at the Stir Crazy Shamans, just no spaces and a .com, and you will find it.
StirCrazyShamans.com.
And I'm pretty sure I put it in the description too. Like everywhere, it should be in the description for the video, except for maybe Periscope, because I don't think it lets us put a description, so you won't have it if you're on Periscope. And then what else do we have coming up? Next Saturday, if you're local, I am teaching an Access Bar class, certification class, and I may or may not be known for throwing a few shamanic things into it. But
well, let me check something real quick. Speaking of next Saturday, is that next Saturday? What's today? Sunday, the 5th?
Today's the 5th. Next Saturday is the 11th.
Saturday the 11th at the new moon, we are doing, starting at 3 o'clock, I think it's like 3 to 7 or 3 to 8. We're doing like a free healing day. So we have, I think, 3 or 4 different healers, and we're just doing like 5 mini sessions with each person. So like we're just letting whoever wants to come in. So that'll be a really cool event for anyone who wants to show up, get a taste for what we do, and also if you're open to the possibility, like some really incredible shifts can happen.
Well, I guess I know Casey's not coming to my class then.
Yeah, I guess so. And then also, I am. So I can announce this now because I've got things set up now. I will be at the new moon in Lakewood on Wednesdays from 3 to 7, Thursdays from 12 to 4, and that will be there the 1st, 4th, and if there's a 5th, the 5th Sunday of every month. And then I will be at Goddess Elite in North Olmsted the 2nd and 3rd Sunday of every month. And the Sundays are 12 to 4 at both places. So, yeah, if you want to catch me in person, if you're in the Northeast Ohio area, check me out. I'll be there. I'm also doing shamanic healing out of Holistic Health and Healing in North Olmsted. And then I've got the online stuff. So I'm all over the place doing so many cool shamanic healing events and things. So, yeah.
And for me, I do things online, and I'm lazy. I just do stuff out of my office in Goddess Elite, which is right next door to my office. So I just use my office, and it works out nice. But HankSutherland.com, you can see the scheduler, and I've set things up via Zoom if you do need virtual things. And what I do, I call it no limit healing. And I don't know what I'm going to do until we start, because until I tap into the energy, and sometimes it might be shamanic, sometimes it might be sound, sometimes it might be access, or it might be mixing everything together, which is usually what it ends up being. Was there anything? I feel like I'm missing something, but that was the Access Bars class. Oh, there's some other streams coming up on Tuesday. Conversations with got a discussion group with Sean Phillips, and I think that's the only stream other than our normal streams. And then Friday I'm on with Dr. K, who's a functional medicine doctor. She talks about medicine stuff and I talk about shaman stuff, and we find this amazing middle ground where both things are relevant at the same time. So if you want a little conversation with that is on Fridays at 10 o'clock, but on the HHH YouTube channel, not Stir Crazy Shamans. Cool. I think that's it.
Yeah. And well, not to throw one more YouTube channel out there because we just gave a lot of information at once, but Shaman's Way is my YouTube channel, and I'll probably be going on at some point today to do a like free mini sessions of shamanic healing. So tune into that, subscribe to the channel, you'll get notified when I go on.
Yeah, and I guess because I feel like since we give all that information, we should end on a good note.
Oh, love it.
So just as let this resonate with you. Allow the sound to go in throughout your whole body, being and beyond, and take anything that's heavy and allow it to effortlessly flow out of your energy field, out of your body, flowing through the camera, being sucked in by this beautiful crystal bowl and being transmuted into light expression of Sami. And this is just one little tool that we use on the Wednesday sessions. I have 21 crystal bowls in my office, and you never know which ones will come out to play when Casey and I get together to do our amazing group healing work. not to mention light language and anything else that happens to come up. So a Nike, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have an absolutely magical, beautiful day.
Yeah, and if we are on tomorrow, it will be in the afternoon, probably around after 3 o'clock if we're on. If not tomorrow, we will see you on Tuesday. And thank you so much. We'll catch you next time.